I am mining investor and editor of Resource Stock Digest, Gerardo del Real, here with my partner, Senor Mr. Nick Hodge, who's also an investor and the publisher of Daily Profit Cycle. This is the 230th episode of our weekly therapy session that we like to call Investing in Bizarro World. We're going to talk about the markets. We're going to talk about the bizarro world around us. We'll have a pretty important Patriot update. A lot going on as always. Mr. Hodge, how goes you this week? Senor.
I go well. You've introduced yourself in Espanol the past 2 weeks. I wonder what changed. You're Gerardo now.
Deras!
But no, doing good. And I know there's been a bunch of Patriot news, so I figured I would get to prop my feet up here. I got my shoes off, and I was going to hear your takes.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, the parts that were easy for me to speculate on were the resource, right? You knew the grade was going to come in at roughly 1.4. I thought it would be 1.3, 1.4. And the tonnage, I could tell by the tone of Blair when I spoke with him that he didn't want to engage me on that 150 to 160 million ton number that I was putting out there. Though in fairness, the one that I was putting out there, I had it at a lower percentage, right? I had that between 1 and 1.2. So anyhow, I thought it'd be close to 100. I said between 100 and 110. Obviously, it came out at 109, which, I mean, for a sneak peek, it's absolutely brilliant what the Patriot team has been able to do with $45 million, which is what they put into the ground to establish what John Kaiser said is the equivalent of a 71 million ounce gold deposit grading 20.2 grams per ton gold, right? That's the sneak peek maiden mineral resource estimate on one of the CVs, one of the clusters, and it's open on each side and it's open at depth. And by the way, it might all connect as one big blob, or as Jody DeRouge explained it to me and explained it well, because obviously I am not a geologist. He called it, imagine a carton of eggs, right? Where you have the clusters, and yes, they're all connected potentially, but a carton of eggs, right? Different blobs all connected by one system. For $45 million to get you this resource on a first pass is absolutely brilliant. Congrats to the Patriot team. Congrats to shareholders. Congrats to frustrated shareholders like myself a bit. I mean, at the end of the day, I sell 1,000 or 2,000 shares every month for tuition bills and tax bills and miscellaneous stuff. That's nothing relative to the size of my position, but would I rather sell at $20 or $25 where I think the stock should be? Absolutely, right? Doesn't matter at the end. No, I still believe I'm definitely going to get my $50 price target at the very minimum. And the fact that Albemarle decided to come in with $109 million at over $15 per share is as significant a vote of confidence as you could have for a project that just published a maiden resource estimate. Not much else that you can say that wasn't already covered in the news releases. Look, I think what comes next is what's exciting to me. I think people are bored with waiting for the resource estimate. You know, I had speculated a few months ago, back in May, I think. And again, this was just common sense, right? That a major, whether a chemical company or a mining company, would come in and take a public stake. That clearly was writing on the wall. It didn't take a scientist to come up with that thesis. It took longer than I thought. And then, you know, common sense kicked in. I thought, well, they're waiting for that maiden resource estimate. So that makes sense to me now. What I think happens next is the part I'm really excited about. The drills are turning. We're going to have a pretty in-depth sit-down with Blair here over the next few days that will publish to the public later next week. But the drilling is going to start, I think, uncovering what else Corvette is going to unearth, right? I think there's a whole heck of a lot more. I think there's a potential for 3, 4, 5 CV5s. I think at the end of the day, this has the potential to be the biggest lithium deposit in the world to come out, swing the bat, and you're the biggest in North America, this type of deposit, and you're the 8th biggest globally. Again, congrats to the Patriot team, and I know shareholders are frustrated with the price action. Look, the shorts are still playing with the stock. I'm sure there's other major mining companies that are nibbling that are likely also playing with the stock. I know that there's at least 2 other companies that have smaller undisclosed stakes. You all can guess which two those are. Again, don't have to be a scientist to guess those names. But no, look, all in all, we have the goods, and the goods aren't going anywhere. And the goods on a peer basis, when you do comps, are worth a whole heck of a lot more than the current market cap by a factor of like 2 or 3 right now.
So I was going to ask you about those other companies because Albemarle was a new name for me. Not obviously, I know Albemarle and what it is and does, obviously, but I hadn't heard it in the context of the Patriot story, right? We've heard a lot about Pilbara because of Ken. We've heard a lot about MinRes. But Albemarle was a new
There's
name.
your
Was
two,
that
by the way. Thank you.
was well, like you say, it's not hard.
Yeah.
Was it a surprise for you that it was Albemarle?
It was a surprise that they were the first to go public, right? I mean, MinRes obviously has been on the record saying that they're nibbling, right? It was a surprise that Albemarle was the first one at the table to say, we're willing to write the check. We'll do it at a small premium. We absolutely want a seat at the table. And look, the part that absolutely should be commented on, that I think is underappreciated but is very significant, is the MOU. The MOU gives them a 9-month exclusivity period for them to go ahead and see if there's a deal to be made, as in a partnership for a downstream lithium hydroxy plant. When we talk about the hilariously named Inflation Reduction Act and a lot of the credits, right, that are a part of that act, and how much development has been incentivized as a result, I think this plays right into that. And I think Albemarle is smart to say, hey, it's game on and we don't want to wait. We want a seat at the table. We want the first public acknowledgement of wanting to pursue this. And we're willing to write this check if you give us 9 months to figure out what we have, how big it can be, what it's going to cost. And again, when you combine that with the exploration and everything else that's going on, I couldn't be more excited for the second half of this year.
Do you think there's a potential for, now I'm just interviewing you, sorry. Do you think there's the potential for an even bigger player to come in? And I'll tell you why I asked, because there was 2 articles this week that caught my eye. One was Exxon wants to get into lithium mining, and yeah, they've got the small project in Arkansas, and yeah, they've got obviously oil wells that they could potentially apply some sort of direct lithium extraction to, but that's not really sort of proven yet, although lots of folks are trying to prove it. But in the article that I read that about Exxon wanting to get into the lithium business, the main outfit they were talking to was Albemarle. And then when you look at Albemarle's market cap, which I happen to do, and then you look at Exxon's market cap, there is a very large discrepancy there, something to the tune of like over $400 billion market cap for Exxon and a $24 billion market cap for Albemarle. And it seems to me that if Exxon was serious about getting into lithium, that they could just make an acquisition. And then the other article that caught my eye was Rio Tinto specifically calling out wanting to get into the lithium production business in Canada. And so when you talk about Albemarle wanting to build a downstream whatever hydroxide facility, like why couldn't Rio become the partner for that? And then all of a sudden you're in taking off the shoe territory, right?
This is what we said last time, right? That the bidding wars would be accelerated with the resource estimate. And again, I think you're spot on with those 2 names, Exxon and the other group possibly wanting to come in and be very, very aggressive. It would make a statement. It would cement them in the region. And look, I don't think it's a coincidence that this part of the world is finally getting the respect that it deserves for its mineral endowment as it relates to lithium pegmatites. I mean, when you deliver this right off the bat, it's going to make a lot of eyes that weren't on the stock all of a sudden take a deep, hard look. And when you start throwing out those types of names, the Rio Tintos, the Exxons, the much smaller Albemarle, it's going to be a fun bidding war when it happens. There's a great book, and I forget the name. You'll have the name because we both read it, but it's about Boise's Bay, right? And the bidding war that ensued there.
The Big Score.
The Big Score, that's the name. And it's a great book. If anyone hasn't read it, I highly encourage it. I think the same thing is going to happen with Patriot Battery Metals. And I think the exploration is only going to accelerate that. And Patriot now has 155 to 160 million in the treasury, and they have quite a bit more coming from the 75-cent warrants that will have to be exercised before year end. So no shortage of good news. The share price is absolute hot garbage right now relative to what's there. But the important part, again, is that it's there. And now it's just, to me, it's all upside. We get to find out how much more is there. When we talk metallurgy, when we talk extraction process, it's the lowest cost in the world. When we talk power, we're talking some of the cheapest power in the world.
Cleanest
Power in the world. Literally green lithium, right? We haven't talked about a Tesla coming in or some of the other automakers that also have pretty substantial balance sheets. So I think, again, I think my $50 price tag might prove conservative at the end of this game. When this game ends, I don't have a crystal ball. I'd be surprised if it took more than 12 to 18 months. But I know this much. I know when that first offer comes in, it's either going to be uber aggressive to secure the deal, or it's going to be the first of many, and it's going to be a fun process to watch. And I suspect that us long-term shareholders that are in it for the end game will be handsomely rewarded for, the couple of months of the stock, frankly, being boring on the share price side, though delivering beautifully on the execution in the field side. I mean, again, kudos to Darren and Blair and Ken and that whole team over there. Life-changing gains for a lot of us, and I think it's just getting going. You like to describe the momentum of the snowball as it rolls down the hill, right? I think that snowball is getting a whole hell of a lot bigger.
Yep.
Imagine an initial maiden resource estimate in the gold space right now of 71 million ounces at 20.2 grams per ton gold, and then it'd be an open pit, heap leachable.
71 million tons.
And then you've only explored a tenth of the property. People would be losing their mind. A lot of people just don't realize what's there yet, and none of us know how much more is there. It's going to be fun finding out.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
I am as well. Listen, I mentioned big deposits and awesome grade, and I mentioned gold, and this isn't one that I have a horse in the race at all. I missed it. I'm not the biggest fan of the challenges that the Yukon can present. Mining and exploration is risky enough, right? And there's some additional challenges that come with being in the Yukon. But man, congrats to the Yukon and congrats to Snowline Gold. Because holy moly, did they have a heck of a release. 553.8 meters of 2.48 grams per ton gold. And then, within that was from surface, by the way. And then within that, it's 132 meters of 5 grams per ton gold. So just freakish numbers, amazing numbers. Congrats to that team. Congrats to shareholders. Again, no dog in the race there, but I like to see people win. I like to see people make money, and I'm happy for Snowline, the team, and its shareholders. I think, obviously, much brighter days ahead.
I mean, it's adding, $60 to $100 million in market cap on that whole. It was up 14% in a single day. I was just doing quick math. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, no. Great work there. Great work there. Let me interview you now, Mr. Hodge, the gold space. Back to 1930. We're bored again. Silver's acting like, the basic side piece that silver tends to be when it's a basic side piece. Silver's really exciting when, she stalls herself up and gets going, but just basic right now. Although boring, kind of got an attitude and, not really doing anything of anything. How do you feel about it technically?
Yeah, gold is technically bullish.
Yeah.
Told you it's going to be in a range between 1900 and 2000 until it breaks out north of that, which means that you should be buying on the dips. I've said that a bunch of times now. I think that the situation continues to look good for gold. I think gold has held its own in the face of a dollar that is re-strengthened, in the face of yields that are going up. I think that inflation isn't done, which is, why the Fed was content to hike. And now you've got, oil back over $80, and this double whammy recession that I've mentioned a couple of times is It's still going to happen. There's just now been a bit of space put in between the whammies, if you will. But gold is bullish, and I continue to buy closer to 1900, and I continue to add to positions that I view as favorable and strong gold candidates. Like I was adding to SSR mining recently, for example. I was adding to Newmont, some of the larger producers, but and then you look at the downgrading of U.S. credit. There's lots of tailwinds for gold, and it remains a good environment for gold with relatively high inflation and low growth. So continue to be bullish on gold for sure.
I like it. I saw a tweet that I'm going to quote. This young lady tweeted, 1 year, and I'm only reading it because I think the sentiment in the gold space is very much like this. And frankly, the entire resource space, with the exception of maybe lithium, right? But she tweeted, 1 year ago, I stopped going to coffee shops and started making coffee at home. I ended up saving $5 a day. That's $25 a week, $100 a month, $1,200 a year. I saved $1,200 and invested it into BALD, which is now worth $12. I should have just bought the damn coffee. That's a lot of resource speculators in the space right now. And, you know, it's not always roses. We've had a lot of big wins, but, you know, there's also laggards in the portfolio that, you know, require a uranium bull market or require a more bullish gold market before they really come to life. Confident they will when that happens. Again, no crystal ball, but that's kind of the sentiment right now in the resource space for a lot of these stocks. Though I will say there has been news again that bodes well for the second half of this year once we get past this summer period. Aldebaran Resources, which we've mentioned before, has a huge copper gold resource in Salta province, Argentina. And look, they just announced an additional strategic investment from South 32. It's a $17.5 million financing. I gotta suspect they have some drill results that they're sitting on because it's been quite a bit. I suspect the financing is a part of the reason why it's taken a little bit longer to get those results out. But the stock has perked up a little bit since then, and I suspect that's going to continue to be the case. So that's going to be your free name of the week there. Closed at 96 cents, traded as low as 80 cents just a couple of weeks ago in the midst of that financing. So Aldebaran Resources, one to keep an eye on. I don't think that one lasts for more than the next 24 months before it gets taken out at 4 to 5 times current levels.
Yeah. I was watching a presentation that John Black gave at Rick Rule's conference this week, or maybe the conference was last week, but I was just watching the John Black video. And we've talked about Aldebaran a lot. We talked about last week, in fact, how there had been a slow news flow, and that was one of the companies I was writing about in my letter last week. Is that in their last news release in early June, they said that they had other holes that were nearly complete, and so you would be expecting those results shortly. And as you said, yeah, now we know why we haven't got the results yet, and I would expect them to start coming out now. A couple of other just interesting things to add there. Glencore has come into that province in Argentina and bought a project. I believe that was this week, right, from Pan American.
Yep.
Mara, it's called MARA, and so that area of Argentina, we can't talk today. That area of Argentina continues to heat up and attract major mining investment. Right, the Lundin's now there. John Black says this all the time, but McEwen is there with Los Azules, for example, and so. Some very big players moving into the area. The other thing is interesting to note is that management wrote a check in this financing as they continue to do, and they've been supportive in the open market as well. And then the other thing I was reading is that Sibanye still has the chance to participate, to keep their percentage ownership, because Aldebaran has multiple strategic backers, right? They have South 32, yes. They also have Route 1, which is sort of a private equity or large financing group out of San Francisco that owns almost half the company. I think like 43 or 46% or something like that. And then Savanier is still a shareholder because that's who had the asset. That's where John Black and team
Yep.
got it from. So I don't know if they will participate. They allowed themselves to be diluted down last year, but they certainly have the opportunity to. And you can see yet more capital coming into that project. And I guess I just wanted to point back to, and then maybe we could talk about Bravo a little bit, is I wrote an article a couple of weeks ago about that Brazilian deal I was telling you about, the one with the Russian oligarch SPAC that all these automakers were ponying up for and banks. And I was calling that like the global kickoff party to the, battery metals race or base metals race or whatever. And now you're seeing the guests starting to show up, right? We talked about Exxon earlier. We talked about, oh, no, we didn't talk about, actually. Let me talk about it for a second. Saudi Arabia has made their first ever investment into the metals mining space, and it is in Vale. They took 10% of Vale's base metal unit, which, if you reverse out the math, it was like $2.6 billion. And then Engine One, who you'll remember is the sort of advocate investor that got board seats on Exxon a couple of years ago. They took a 3% stake. So here you have Saudi Arabia, obviously the largest oil producing nation in the world, built their wealth on the first fuel of the automobiles, now making move here into the base metals industry, and they did that with a Brazilian company. And so I thought that was interesting to me that all of a sudden, just literally in the past month, you've had these, major sovereign energy nations and the largest, oil companies in the world saying they're starting to get into this space. And then Brazil just continues to get headlines, right? The deal we talked about a couple of weeks ago, this deal with Vale and Saudi Arabia. And then, I think we ended last week's podcast with what are you looking forward to in the next week or so? And we were talking about news from Bravo that we were expecting, which of course has a large PGM nickel gold deposit in Brazil, but is increasingly looking like it's going to have a significant base metal component to it. And so, one, we're waiting for drill results. Two, we're still waiting for the results from the electromagnetic survey. And so those haven't come yet. I would imagine with every breath, those news releases are ticking closer to coming out. And I just thought it was an easy way to make the connection between Saudi Arabia and going into Vale's base metal unit and an investment we're involved in, Bravo Mining, potentially about to have some game-changing news on their base metals front on a very large asset in Brazil. And oh, by the way, some big players in that stock as well, right? With BlackRock, who I understand was recently buying in the open market, and then that should tell you something about the opportunity that they either see there or that Luis is telling them is there. So there's not a lot of stock available. For example, that stock, it hit $5 again today, and it doesn't take a lot of buying to move that stock higher.
Couldn't agree with you more. I'm curious to see when that news from Bravo comes out. Obviously, as a shareholder, I'm biased and would rather see it sooner rather than later. I can't help but think that maybe they're sitting on it a little bit longer to get closer to September, right? When people are paying a bit more attention. But, kind of like Patriot, if you have the goods, just put it out there and let the market catch up, right? I will say this to your point of, Saudi Arabian checkbooks and Exxon Mobil checkbooks and, all these big, deep-pocketed players that are now coming into the various sectors in the resource space. Follow the money, folks. These are not mini trends. These are not 6-month trends, 1-year trends that are going to make a U-turn anytime soon, whether it's copper or, lithium or uranium. The setup is absolutely beautiful for making a lot of money if we do it right. And look, we're going to get some wrong, like we always get some wrong, but a couple of big wins can negate a couple of small losses every single time. There's going to be a lot of big wins over the next several years. We've had some big ones already. Don't want to rest on our laurels. Definitely want to search out the next set of big, 1,000% gains, like the Bravos, right? Which we helped finance at 50 cents. Now sits there at $5 or, that was US, but we're almost up, 1,000% there. that's fine and dandy. But if they have a game-changing nickel copper massive sulfide deposit that runs anywhere close to the 8 kilometers of the Luanga deposit, and they got the grade, that's gonna get into double digits really, really quick, and also gonna get very, very fun. So a lot to like in the space, despite the fact that a lot of people are bored in the summertime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the valuations and the volume were low, and the fundraising environment continues to be challenging. But there are teams and companies and assets that are getting it done.
Absolutely. You want to touch on Bitcoin at all? You want to go there? Any thoughts there?
Yes, because Bitcoin's back below 30,000. I told you this might not be the move, and I wasn't thinking it was just going to grow to the sky from here. But you remember the Bitcoin rapper girl? Do you remember her?
Oh yeah. I remember.
I think her stage name was like Razzle Kwan or something like that, or Razzle Khan. Guilty, her and her husband.
No way.
Hacking and attempting to launder some $4.3 billion of the Bitcoin that he stole. He was a Russian native. Hacked Bitfinex, stole these Bitcoin, I think in 2016 or something like that. And they proceeded to be worth billions of dollars, and they were, doing their best to hide them away, if you remember. But in the process, we're recording their lavish brunches, all the purses they're buying. And she apparently tried to start up a rap career that was, just hilarious, the videos that she was posting to Instagram. And ultimately, they got caught by using the stolen coins to buy gift cards, specifically Walmart gift cards, which they then used to purchase goods at Walmart. And that was what broke open the case. The feds or the prosecutors were able to tie the purchase of those gift cards back to the specific Bitcoins that were stolen, because it's all on the ledger, right? So anyway, it was a blast from the past. It's been a crazy couple of years. And when I saw her with her rose glasses today, I saw a headline on Twitter or something, it was like, oh yeah, I remember that girl.
You imagine trying to
guilty.
launder $4 billion and you get caught buying Walmart gift cards? Like, what is wrong with people out there? Look, it's Bizarro World.
They could have bought a 10% stake in Vale's base metal unit.
Come on, folks. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? Look, speaking of criminals and crime, the Trumpster got indicted again. This one looks a little more serious than some of the other ones. Conspiracy to defraud the United States, maximum sentence 5 years. Conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, rig an election, maximum sentence 20 years. Obstruction of an official proceeding, an election, maximum sentence 20 years. And conspiracy against rights, maximum sentence 10 years. Interesting note, the judge, he was just arraigned and arrested. The judge has warned Trump that he may be held pending trial if he violates the conditions of his release. And one of those conditions is not speaking to any direct witnesses except through counsel. And knowing this man's lack of discipline, if he's guilty, law and order is what he said. Go do the time. If he's not guilty, it is what it is, right? He's not guilty. Fine. We'll let a jury of his peers, if that exists, decide that. I'm more interested to see if he's able to shut the fuck up for the next little bit before he goes to trial. And if he doesn't get himself in trouble and get himself actually sitting in a prison cell awaiting trial because he won't have the discipline to actually see it through. When you look at some of the allegations in the document, I scanned through some of the highlights, some of the bullet points. There's some pretty gnarly stuff in there, man. Telling Pence he was too honest, straight outright going to election officials saying, I need you to turn this around. Some of the people, some of his co-conspirators, I think there's 6 or 7 of them, they look like they're going to be in trouble soon. Giuliani looks like he's in trouble. This is a hot mess. Whatever you believe politically, folks, this isn't a political hit. This is Mr. Trump just trumping, and I think he overplayed his hand on this one. We'll see.
So, refresh my memory. This is a separate indictment now, right?
This is the third one, I believe.
The third one. They also added charges to the classified document one. They added, I think 3 charges. So that trial. It's getting hard to parse out, and the New York Times is doing their best, and and I get to the effects of that in 1 second, but first of all, it's just getting tough to keep track of as an individual. 3 different cases, all the different charges, the trial dates. But for the documents one, that trial was already set for May and now may be pushed out until after the election, and so. All this, I think, is having the effect, and we see this in the polls, of solidifying his base. Even if you take out like all the rest of the candidates except for DeSantis, if it was just Trump, DeSantis, like Trump still wins. He's got that much of a head start or a lead in the polls against all the other candidates, and all this coverage specifically by liberal rags like the New York Times or whatever, who are trying to parcel out all these different trials and cases and evidence, are, basically solidifying his base, so much so that I saw in the Babylon Bee the other day that, they were praising the 3rd indictment. They said he's got the hat trick. Like, it's like a positive thing. Like, I mean, that's a pro-Trump, it's like the Onion for conservatives, right? Praising Trump for getting the indictment hat trick. And so, it's going to help him, definitely with a nomination, and then we'll see about the general election. But, in this bizarre world, the ideas that are already being floated out there, and certainly no more crazy than having alien bodies, right, is, can Trump win the election and pardon himself?
It's 2023, baby. Anything can happen in 2023 and 2024. I mean, I don't put anything past anything anymore, Nick. These last couple of years have been some of the weirdest, most fascinating years of not just my life, but of lifetimes I've read about, right? I'm a history geek. And I go back and I'm like, man, there was interesting stuff back in the day, but this stuff right here is taking the cake on a lot of fronts. And look, I'll have my popcorn again. Law and Order, right? That was the mantra. So we're gonna see what that is, and all the best to everybody. Like I always say, reciprocity to everybody. No more, no less than whatever it is we deserve. Right? May that be the gavel that does the judging for all of us. So yeah, interesting times for sure. Interesting times. I'm supposed to remind all of you to go to dailyprofitcycle.com/subscribe for all of our updates, market commentary, thoughts, opinions, rants, raves, all the stuff straight to your inbox. Nick, what are you watching this week? I know we're watching Bravo, and you and I obviously are biased on that front. Anything else that you're curious? Aldebaran, we talked about. I'm looking forward to results there.
It seems like, maybe bad news is bad news again here. We've talked for the past couple of weeks about where the volatility is, about how the stocks continue to go up in the face of lots of bad data. And then, we turn the page of the calendar to August. All of a sudden, volatility's back a little bit, a couple of down days in the market. So just interested to see, continued economic data that's coming out and try to parse that out and then figure out when this second whammy is going to come. I think it's almost like eye of the storm, as it were, right now, right? With lots of bullishness. I mean, you still got the meme stock stuff, which is crazy to me. Like Tupperware was up 700% this week, and they're bankrupt. It says they can't pay their bills, yada yada. And it's like, oh, let's buy Tupperware. And so it all just continues to be interesting out there. And I guess the other thing I'm looking at is these commodity prices, right? I'm interested to see if this is really a thing, or if this breakout of the past couple of weeks was a head fake. So I'm looking at that CRB index, looking at oil, and watching copper.
Definitely watching copper. Interesting price action. Energy sector, that's interesting. Again, this all amongst a backdrop of slower global growth and rising interest rates, right? The world is so interesting. We didn't really touch on, you mentioned it in passing, but on the U.S. debt downgrade, we'll get into that maybe next week. Let's see how the bond market continues to absorb that. 30-year mortgage rates are now at 7.2%. It's interesting times, everybody. That's really all I got for you. Anything else you want to get off your chest, Mr. Hodge?
Well, then, I think we're good.
All right. Blair, they didn't like your presentation yesterday. You and I are going to get together and hopefully provide one for the folks here next week. We'll hope to have that to you late next week. I am Gerardo Del Real, along with Mr. Nick Hodge. This was episode 230 of our weekly therapy session that we call Investing in Bizarro World. Don't do the crime. Don't do the time. Or if you can't do the time, law and order. Have a great week out there, everybody.
Nope. See ya.
Hey there, you independent-minded investor. If you like this video, make sure to tell us so by clicking the like button below. Subscribe to our channel so you never miss another one. And share it with everyone you know on social media. You can also click the link in the description below to check out more information-packed videos just like this one. Thanks for watching.